Hey everyone, today we're diving into this explainer by actually traveling back in time to solve literally the greatest microscopic mystery in the entire universe. And the absolute coolest part? It's a mystery about you, me, and, well, everything.
Think about it for a second. Just like living things are built out of tiny cells, we gotta ask a much deeper question. What are those cells, the water you drink, the stars in the sky, and just everything else in the universe actually made of? What are the ultimate fundamental building blocks of reality?
We call these fundamental building blocks atoms. But to truly wrap your head around how tiny our mystery subjects are, just listen to this number. One single microscopic biological cell contains over 100 trillion atoms. That is just mind-blowing. To put that into perspective, an atom is about 0.1 nanometers across, which is 100,000 times smaller than the width of a single human hair. They're so incredibly small you couldn't even see them with the regular microscope.
Because atoms are completely invisible to the naked eye, scientists basically had to play detective. In this explainer, we're going to track this mystery through history, following the brilliant detectives who cracked the secrets of the atom piece by piece. We'll start all the way back in ancient Greece and move right up into the modern era.
Section 1. Ancient Guesses and Solid Spheres.
All right, let's start our journey with the earliest guessers. These guys didn't even have magnifying glasses, let alone microscopes. Back in 400 BC, the Greek philosopher Democritus looked at the world and guessed that if you just kept cutting an object in half over and over again, eventually you'd hit a piece so ridiculously tiny that it absolutely could not be divided anymore. He called these ultimate particles atomos, which in Greek means indivisible or uncuttable. Fast forward a massive 2,300 years to the 1800s. A British scientist named John Dalton took this ancient Greek idea and upgraded it. He suggested atoms were kind of like tiny solid spheres. Dalton figured that different types of these solid spheres made up different chemical elements, like oxygen or carbon, and they could snap together to build the stuff we see every single day.
Section 2. The Plum Pudding Puzzle. So, Dalton thought he had it all perfectly figured out. But our next detective stumbled onto a shocking clue that flipped the whole solid sphere idea completely upside down. In 1897, a physicist named J.J. Thomson was messing around with these things called cathode rays, and through his brilliant experiments, he proved that atoms actually could be cut. He discovered that atoms held much smaller pieces inside them with a negative electrical charge. Boom, he had just discovered the electron. Now, Thomson knew that overall, atoms have a neutral charge. So, if there are tiny negative electrons hiding inside, there has to be a positive charge in there too, right? Just to balance the whole thing out. He came up with what he called the plum pudding model. Picture a ball of positively charged dough, totally dotted with tiny negative electrons, kind of like raisins in a plum pudding. Or, honestly, chocolate chips in a scoop of cookie dough.
Section 3. The Gold Foil Surprise.
All right, get ready for a totally mind-bending plot twist that changed science forever. In 1909, Ernest Rutherford and his students decided to really test Thomson's cookie dough idea. They fired tiny positively charged alpha particles at an impossibly thin sheet of gold foil. Now, if the gold atoms were just spread out positive pudding, those particles should have zipped right through like bullets through tissue paper. And you know what? Most of them did. But, and this is the crazy part, a small number of them hit something incredibly hard and bounced straight back.
Because some of those particles ricocheted back, Rutherford proved that atoms aren't pudding at all. They are actually mostly completely empty space. But they have a super dense, highly positive core smack in the dead center called the nucleus. To picture just how crazy this is, if the atom was the size of a giant sports stadium, the nucleus would be the size of a tiny little marble sitting right on the center line. It's 10,000 times smaller than the atom itself, but it holds almost all of its mass.
Section 4. Solar Systems and Clouds.
Now, Rutherford's discovery was absolutely huge, but it created a massive problem. Shouldn't those negative electrons just crash straight into the positive nucleus and collapse the entire atom? Well, in 1913, Niels Bohr solved the puzzle. Don't worry about the complex math. The big takeaway here is that electrons don't just float around randomly. They actually orbit the nucleus in fixed, circular shells, kind of like planets orbiting the sun. And here's the magic trick. An electron needs a very specific burst of energy, a photon, to jump between these shells. That keeps them locked in their orbits and stops the atom from just collapsing on itself. But hey, science never stops digging, right? Today, thanks to the Schrödinger equation, we know it's actually even weirder than perfectly neat planetary orbits. electrons do not move in simple circles. Instead, they live in unpredictable, fuzzy, three-dimensional zones called electron clouds. It's literally impossible to know exactly where an electron is at any given split second. Instead, they zoom around so unbelievably fast that they form a buzzing cloud of probability, kind of like a chaotic swarm of bees buzzing around a hive.
Section 5. The modern atom. So after more than 2,500 years of guesswork and brilliant detective work, what does our final picture of this ultimate microscopic mystery actually look like? Well, the modern atom relies on perfectly balanced teamwork. Notice how the heavy positive protons and neutral neutrons, which by the way were discovered a bit later by a scientist named James Chadwick, sit completely packed together in that tiny, dense nucleus. Meanwhile, those incredibly lightweight negative electrons are doing their wild, unpredictable dance way out in the massive electron cloud.
Now, let's bring this all the way back to you. Everything around you, your screen, your clothes, even your own body, is made of these exact same atoms. And remember Rutherford's gold foil experiment? Atoms are 99.99% empty space. Think about that for a second. That means that you, your friends, and literally everything you see are fundamentally made of mostly empty space.
Which leads us to a massive, totally mind-boggling question to finish off today's explainer. If atoms are basically empty space, and you are made of atoms, and the chair you're sitting on right now is made of atoms, why don't you just fall right through it? I'm going to leave you with that provocative thought to chew on. The answer actually has to do with those buzzing clouds of negative electrons pushing against each other, but I'll let you investigate that one on your own. Because when it comes to the microscopic universe, there's always another fascinating mystery just waiting to be solved.